Coach Painter, welcome to AT&T here at the Final Four Fan Fest. And before we bring it to the current day, let's take it back a little bit. As a young man growing up in the state of Indiana, of course, Hoosiers was in your vocabulary. You knew that you wanted to play for the legendary Bobby Knight at IU. That was the goal. And eventually, you took those talents at Delta High School in Muncie, Indiana, where, of course, we were hoping for that opportunity. That's not how it worked out. That said, fate had taken you a different direction to another icon, the legendary coach, Ncaa and the Purdue Boilermakers as a point guard. On that Purdue team, after growing up in the great state of Indiana as a Hoosier, what was it like to prepare yourself and go in knowing, initially this isn't where I wanted to go, but you found yourself exactly where you needed to be?
Yeah, you know, it's when people have to choose a school, it's 54, things get a little more clear. And, you know, Ncaa was great, and he's still great. And he was fair with me and really helped me. And more than anything, you know, basketball has led me on an unbelievable journey. And people don't understand that, like, you can get a scholarship somewhere, it's great to play college basketball, but it also gives you an advantage in life, especially if you want to stay into coaching. So I'm very fortunate in the opportunities that I've gotten at Purdue as a player and as a coach.
And especially as a floor general, you know better than anybody, you're the coach on the floor. So you were preparing for this moment as the 19th head coach of Purdue long before you probably even realized it. And then, after your 4 years at Purdue, there's a very interesting statistic. You only have one. It is an IMDb credit, Internet Movie Database credit for the 1994 film Blue Chips, where you were a member of the Coast team. And last year, we didn't have this interview. A few years ago, we did. Obviously, you were pretty busy last year. But on this exact day last year, I was interviewing Coach Bobby Hurley, and I asked him, I said, you have to be torn in who you're cheering for on Monday night. He was looking at me like, are you crazy? I said, well, you got your brother on one side, but you have your Blue Chips co-star, Matt Painter, on the other. So, of course, he got a kick of that, but he was cheering for his brother, just so you knew that, but you probably figured that. But let's take this into where we were going to where you're at now as a coach. Because one of those early initial stops was Washington and Jefferson at the Division III level, where it was a new environment for you, an environment where you have kids that are playing purely before the love of the game because there are no athletic scholarships, academic scholarships. But while you were there, also the coaches don't get a pretty hefty salary, so you were moonlighting as a forklift driver as well. Tell us a little bit about that blue-collar experience and how it assisted you to where you're at today.
Yeah, you know, you go 4 years where they recruit you and they tell you, you know, what kind of job they can help you get, and then you go into coaching, and then like it doesn't pay enough, so you have to get another job. So the fact that I was able to get my degree from Purdue and then have to drive a forklift for a couple of months.
My God, y'all keep moving around.
I lived in a basement on Walnut Street and like paid $160 a month, and I loved it. And but we had a great team. We went to the Elite Eight, and so I just thought my first year we went to the Elite Eight. I just thought, well, this is what we're going to do every year. We don't quite realize it's pretty hard to get to a Sweet 16 and get to a Final Four.
Absolutely, at any given level as well. And you learned that early on, and you said, keyword was, as you're mentioning those elements, you said, you finished with, I loved it. You weren't getting paid a big salary. And it eventually wouldn't be enough to support a family, but you stuck with it, the resiliency, and here we are with this opportunity, of course, to go to Eastern Illinois, Southern Illinois, get to an NCAA tournament. What was it like when you get that call, and how does it set in when you realize not only are you going to get the opportunity to coach at your alma mater, you're going to get to replace the legendary coach that you played for in Ncaa?
Yeah, it was very surreal. It was like when you play for somebody like that, you just think they're going to be the head coach there forever. Like you don't look past anything else. So to be able to go back and I was a head coach in waiting, so I went back for 1 year as an assistant, and then to be able to take over. We weren't very good. So at that time, when you're losing, you're miserable. So you're just constantly thinking about, we got to get better players, we got to keep working, we got to stay with it. So you really don't reflect like you do when you get older. And like, man, but I was just fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time twice in my career. I just talked about it at a yet to meet a really good coach with bad players. It's funny how that works. Like great coaches have great players. And so I'm indebted to our guys on our team, guys we've had in the past, and all the success we've had.
You have had a great deal, a laundry list of phenomenal talents as point guards like yourself, but also some great big men have come through the program, including one you had told me a few years ago. I have a special kid coming in. This is long before we knew the tale of Ncaa, and what a special and unique talent he was for you. And more importantly, what was it like, especially in this day and age? Much different than when you were playing. You had to look at a paper to find the media. Nowadays, it's all over the place. There's so much negative press. Not a pro. He's not going to be. And it was like, let the kid enjoy this moment. And he is a drastic part of that moment. As a coach, how do you keep someone focused at a young age? Because we know when we were that age, it's not easy to maintain focus, and you have a thin skin. How are you able to assist in that?
Yeah, or just use any type of that noise as motivation. Allow it to help. And he's proven people wrong all through his career. He didn't play organized basketball until he was a sophomore in high school. So he was learning. So he's not one of those guys you sign and you talk to him about things and he disputes it. He takes it all in. He's a sponge. And he didn't have habits. And so he didn't have bad habits, didn't have good habits, didn't have habits, period. So like he was fabulous. His physicality's unmatched. And so like when people say that about him, I always say those people didn't have to guard him. And so, like, the people that guard him, they have respect for him. And in the NBA, he's done such a good job of being a protector. Like a guy that protects his teammates, kind of an enforcer, a Maurice Lucas type guy. But he's very talented. He's a great rebounder. He's going to have a great career in the pros.
Absolutely, and a phenomenal guy off the court as well. I got to interview him, so that's a special thing to talk about as well, because it goes far beyond the talent. You mentioned no great coaches; they don't do it without great players. But you also need good students, you need good people, because that's going to help breed that community environment and build that team, like that family motive to get there and get it done together. And for you, you've done it many times. In your Division I coaching career, 17 NCAA tournaments, 8 Sweet 16s, 2 Elite 8s, 1 Final Four, and 1 national championship game. And before we talk about present day, let's take it back to this moment last year. How are you preparing your team, the Boilermakers, on this game, on the Saturday game, to get through and win it and not look too far ahead, be in the moment, but ideally the eventual goal was to win it?
You just worry about the next game. And so NC State had made a great run to get here. They had a very unique team. The big kid that they had caused a lot of problems in the tournament. We thought we were going to have Trey Kaufman-Renn start on like guard him. And then when he wasn't in, Zach would guard him. We wouldn't keep Zach on him the whole time. We were going to double him some to start with. But as the game progressed, we got Zach on him and we didn't double him. We just stayed home. So we just stayed home with the shooters. So we had a great defensive game plan. Our coaches did a great job. I think we held them to 50 points, if I'm not mistaken. So that was kind of first and foremost. And then a lot of people didn't have to deal with somebody like Zach Edey. So they can talk about their game plan, but until they actually go through it. So we wanted to play through him and just kind of see how they would handle that, how they would mess with that. Because when they double, we had enough good shooters to make it pay.
And then you get to that moment, you won the game, but there's no rest. 48 hours you're going to be playing in front of the biggest television audience in the world and the biggest physical audience to ever watch a basketball game at State Farm Stadium in Phoenix, Arizona, versus a very talented UConn team that was coming off a national championship. So you knew it was going to be no easy feat, regardless of who you met in the final, but this is an extra talented team with the experience. So what was that like? What were you doing preparing your team for that moment?
Yeah, it was the best defensive team we faced in a long time. And so we understood that. So you want to sell, your game plan and what you want to do, but you got to really sell your opponent. What coaches do probably the most is they oversell things to try to get their point across. We didn't have to oversell that one. Like they were very, very good, but we also felt like, even though how great they were on the interior, that they couldn't guard Zach Edey. So he was 15 for 25, but what they did was stay at home with their shooters and then keep him one-on-one. If we had to do it over again, we'd have got him more shots. Just because we felt like we had that matchup, we had to stay with it. But it's also from their standpoint, we needed those 3-point shots. So we tried to run stuff, do different things, but they were elite. We got to give them credit. They were a true national champion.
Absolutely. And if you would, take us to that post game when you're in the locker room. For some of those players you knew, that was the last time they would play organized basketball. For many of them, their careers will maybe go on to the NBA or come back to you the next year. But the reality is, to get there, it was the ultimate battle, and those kids left it all out on the court. But again, obviously, to be that close, sometimes it's even more dangerous because they saw it right there. They were that close. How do you explain to them or talk to them? What was that like?
Well, it's that speech you don't want to give. Like you want to coach at least one season where you don't have to give that speech, where you're thanking them for everything, you're grateful for everything, but you just lost. So like, it's hard. It's hard to get the right words out at that time because we start the second week of June and we go all the way around to the first week of April. And they put in so much, especially the guys that have been there 4 years or 5 years that invested so much. So, but you're proud of them. I always say you give your best. That's all you got to work on. I always say it sounds like you're putting your kindergartner on the bus. I'm like, hey, just try your best, Billy. Like everything will work out great. But like, there's so much stuff that comes out. I always say the positive things from social media will kill you, and the negative things from social media will kill you. Because when you read how great you are and you read how bad you are, you're probably somewhere in between. But like, it's the one thing that you have in common with your players is that you take a lot. And if you let them steal your joy, they will. So like, you gotta like be secure with yourself, feel good about it. And this is our passion. We've worked hard to get here. Let's not ruin it. And then when it doesn't work for you, you got to make sure that they know that you appreciate their hard work and everything they sacrifice for.
Absolutely. And then as you prepare, you got to reset. As you mentioned, in June it starts all over again. And again, you battled all the way through the back, and in fact, getting all the way to the Sweet 16, facing an obviously very talented Houston team. And if you look at that matchup, you lost by 2. You already know how this, and then I looked every statistical category. You either had the advantage or had the same amount, with the exception of the 3-point percentage. You had the lead at half, and then it comes down to very minuscule things, 2 points. And you have to go in and have that conversation again. And then you obviously see the success that team has post game. So you're like, wow, we know how good that team was. They're here in the Final Four with an opportunity, if they win tonight, to play in the national championship. What was that like? And can you tell us anything about that Houston team? It was unique.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Once again, it's a tough deal. We're right there. We're play away from it, and it's hard. It's a real hard pill to swallow when you feel like you gave enough effort. It's one of those games where both teams deserve to win. That's just not the way it works. They're a great defensive team. They're a great rebounding team. The one category they were better than us, they out-rebounded us by 7, and they're such a good rebounding team, especially offensive rebounds and the way they tap the ball back, that you actually take it. Like, you're like, but like now we wanted to flip it in the turnovers and try to have fewer turnovers, and we were even. And so that ends up being the difference. If they're going to have 7 more possessions and you're in a 2-point game, we had some things not go our way in the last 4 minutes that was out of our control. But we just had to be a couple possessions better. But Houston's great. Obviously, Coach Sampson's a great coach. They're a great defensive team. Number 1 3-point shooting team in the country. So you got the number 1 defense and the number 1 3-point shooting team. It's a pretty good combination.
And a highly experienced team, which in this current modern day area, that's not easy to find guys you have for multiple years because of the transfer portal, the one-and-done scenarios. But we all know that we have 4 left. Tomorrow, we'll know there will only be 2, and you were there, and I will tell this to you. Maybe I should have done it last time, because I didn't for Coach Scott Drew, and it didn't come true. Next year at this time, I hope we're not having this conversation. I hope you're preparing for a national championship. You deserve to be there. You've been there so many times through the madness of March and the abyss of April, but you'll be back. Give it up one more time for our coach of the Purdue Boilermakers, Coach Matt Painter. And now with that, we're going to give you the opportunity to quickly take a photo, say hello to Coach, embrace this opportunity for what it really is. Someone who is there that knows it.